Your Excellency, thank you very much. And we will be on microphone. It is an honor to be here. This is a serious conference where they ask tough questions and seek concrete solutions. I've also noticed that in your interviews that I've studied up on before coming here, you give blunt answers. So I invite you to be even more blunt today. Let's start with the news of the day. President Zelensky was at the EU forum that's going on right now, and he brought up his victory plan, one of the main tenets of which is an invitation to join NATO. Why not invite them now? And if not, who's blocking it? Starting as I mean to go on.
Okay. You know, I think that there are NATO member states that are very much in support of Ukraine becoming NATO member as soon as possible. But indeed, we have those discussions at NATO summits, at NATO foreign and defense ministers meetings, and we do have some countries that are saying, let's first of all have the active military phase complete. Let's have some, let's say, time. Then we have countries that do believe that the actual invitation would mean further escalation. Those who are against, those are, by the way, very well known. They have been speaking in public that they don't accept currently the possibility of NATO's expansion. But I have one point that I want to make before you ask the next question, is that, yes, indeed, that's great to have invitation. But I would be much more looking at not invitation as the kind of point in the plan, but actual membership. Why? Because we have experience of 2008 Bucharest Summit declaration, where it was stated that Ukraine and Georgia once upon a time is going to become NATO members. That's once upon a time is already 16 years old promise. So I would say that it's not enough simply to get an invitation to join NATO, but then you have to have a plan how actually Ukraine becomes full-fledged member, because we can get another 16 years between invitation and actual membership. So that is where I would say I understand why there is a diplomatic language about the invitation. I understand why it's being pronounced no, but I don't see currently that out of 32 member states we have full understanding and agreement that it must happen today. But happy to see how we are going to proceed with that discussion in coming weeks and months.
But it is a symbolic move that the Ukrainian president has asked for and says is key to his country's victory. So if it were up to you, would Latvia vote in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Without naming the U.S., you have said that there is, staying on Ukraine, quote, no rational or pragmatic reason not to allow Ukraine to use Western-donated weapons on targets anywhere in Russia. You've said, quote, fears of Russian nuclear escalation are not grounded in reality. You've also said that the slogan, as long as it takes, does not equal until Ukraine wins. So when you and the other two Baltic presidents were briefing the Biden administration, what did they say when you stressed these issues?
Well, with no mentioning any U.S. administration, I can say that indeed we hear that there are certain fears of possible escalation on Russian side.
Specifically nuclear escalation?
All kinds of possible escalation. And yes, indeed, I do believe that, of course, such kind of prudent thinking has right to take place. But I also believe that the whole, even history of this war that already lasts for 2.5 years, the history shows that actually all those fears of escalation that we had, look, when the war started, February 2022, March 2022, first we were all saying that Ukraine needs to get Western equipment. Then the major objection was, oh, Ukrainians will not be able to use them because it's very sophisticated. Wrong. Ukrainians are great masters to use Western weapon systems, ammunition. Then we had, and you said that I'm blunt, wait, when you get Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania, my very good friend Landsberg is talking, then you will see what blunt means. But then I still remember what we had the long discussion about delivery of German Leopard tanks. We were told, no, Ukrainians are not going to use them. Then we had F-16. Again, neither escalation nor the problem with Ukrainians using that. So from that point of view, I earnestly believe that whenever we show some kind of weakness or doubt, Russia actually pushes and gets more escalation. When they see that we are serious and we provide weapons and Ukrainians are using those weapon systems as best as they can against legitimate Russian military targets. We are talking about legitimate Russian military targets inside of the territory. Then all of a sudden the whole military logic ends. And then we did a huge mistake last year. We should also acknowledge our mistakes. You remember we had quite a great belief that counteroffensive of Ukraine will produce tangible results. But we didn't provide what Ukrainians needed, and then all of a sudden we were kind of in shock that not everything went according to the plan. So
overpromised and underdelivered.
And not Ukrainians should be blamed for that. That is actually our fault, and we need to correct that. But unfortunately, yes, we are going to spend a couple of weeks or months before we will reach the decision, but I'm still optimistic that at the end of the day, we will move also in that direction.
But still, are you frustrated with the White House in particular? Because if they said yes, other Western allies could follow.
Frustration is not something that I'm paid for. I'm paid for trying to convince my colleagues, friends and allies to do what I believe is right. If they have other thoughts, I'm ready to discuss them, but I still believe that we should move on. So frustration or fears is not something that I'm paid for. I'm paid for solutions.
So you mentioned it in your speech. Everyone's waiting for the next president, the U.S. presidential election. So what if a new U.S. president decides to end support for Ukraine? Is Europe prepared to pick up the slack? And say it's a second Trump administration and Trump follows through with his veiled threats to withdraw from NATO. Can Europe again pick up the slack?
Well, I understand all the internal political discussion and debate currently in the United States. And of course, I will invoke now 12 years of experience as the foreign minister not to comment anything on any electoral process in our friendly
and I'm not asking you about the electoral process.
And that's why I will still say that I do have some belief that whoever is going to be the next president, there is not going to be any kind of termination of U.S. help. But I would twist the question. I think that it's not whether Europe is prepared to, let's say, cover the possible deficit. It is about the fact that Europe must do more regardless of that or another decision in the United States. And we know our problems. Our defense industry in Europe should pick up, not only because of Ukraine, but because of our own needs. I was in Germany at the beginning of this week. I was leading a very large business delegation, and I had also a meeting with German defense industry. the Confederation and also with one of the leading companies deal because we are procuring air defense systems. And I'm hearing that from European defense industrial leaders time and time again. We need a long-term commitment from European governments, money, and then we are ready to boost production. If we don't have that, we are not able to do that. So we need to do our job regardless of who is going to be the president or what kind of decisions that or another president in the United States is going to take.
So that brings us to Baltic defense. If Europe isn't moving fast enough, or the European manufacturing industry isn't moving fast enough because it hasn't gotten the orders, how are you protecting this area? A Russian drone flew something like 90 kilometers into Latvia before crashing. It was armed. When will you have the kind of air defense that you can protect the Latvian people?
Well, the drone issue is probably one of the hottest subjects of the Latvian politics already for 1 month. So I have to be very careful in commenting that part. But look, it is absolutely clear, and also Ukrainian experience has shown that the drone warfare is here. And yes, indeed, we have good reason to suspect that that specific drone incident was not directed at us, simply that drone veered off the course and flew past some countries and crashed in Latvia. But we have identified shortfalls. Radar coverage is the one that we need to improve. Air defense systems most probably are not going to use million worth of missile to shoot down a couple of thousand worth of drone. So we have to search for, first of all, our own national solutions. Our defense ministry and armed forces have learned what they should do. They have strengthened the capabilities that we have, but we also understand we need to have more. And then there is second issue. That's an overall NATO approach, because we have such incidents already have happened in Poland, in Romania, and now in Latvia. There is still lack of general NATO approach. We here in the Baltic states do not have our own fighters. So one thing that we need to do to upgrade procedures. Second, we have an air policing mission. We need to move to what has been decided already in Madrid and in Vilnius and reaffirmed in Washington, mostly reaffirmed in Washington. We should switch to air defense on a rotational basis. And unfortunately, we see that we are not yet there because we depend on our friends and allies, but we need fighters, we need to have updated procedures. So it's a joint effort, national and NATO.
But you can't put a timeline on it.
We had to do that yesterday.
Yeah, but does that still mean, is it 1 year,
As soon
is
as
it 2 years?
As soon as possible. I would say tomorrow, but I'm realistic, but we should not say 1 year or 2 years. Then everyone is going to relax. Let's be frank, I very much agree with those who are saying we don't know when such kind of incident as we had may happen again in Lithuania, in Latvia, maybe even in Estonia or Finland, because those drones have shown that they can fly remarkable distance. And we don't know when we are going to be tested by our not very friendly neighbors at this point.
So you have grown up in the Soviet system, seen Latvia reach independence. You were a reporter early in your career. You speak Russian. What does Putin want?
Yeah, that's a good question. But I think that even those who speak Russian or have some kind of experience of growing up or living in the Soviet-occupied Baltic states don't have an easy answer. I do believe that we need to listen very carefully and to understand that it's not a bluff to what he has said. That the collapse of the Soviet Union has been the greatest calamity or whatever tragedy of 20th century. That the Russian Empire and Bolsheviks actually destroying Russian Empire did huge mistake. I do believe that he's dreaming about restoring not the Soviet Union so much as the kind of Russian Empire. And that is something that not only the Baltic states or Poland, but also Finland and other countries should be really concerned. Whether he's going to attack any of NATO countries militarily, not today, but if he sees the chance, if he sees that NATO is weak, if he sees that we are allowing escalation, he's going to test us. So that's why I'm saying that the only way how we can actually resist his kind of dreams of restoring of the empire, and he understands that restoration of the empire is not possible without Ukraine being part of Russia, or occupied or a satellite or whatever. But if he sees the chance, he will use it. If he sees that we are strong, resilient, spending more on defense, brushing aside all this kind of rhetoric that we have about de-escalation and everything else, he's not going to attack. He's a very good learner, and he's very good, I would say, student of history. And being a historian, I would say that I would disagree with his understanding of history, but I see that he has his own understanding, and we should counter that.
Yanis said that I could take another few minutes. I wanted to ask a question that I think is near and dear to you. What's happening in the aftermath of October 7th and the attacks in Israel? It's led to now the Israeli operation in Lebanon. And of course, Latvia has troops who are taking part in the UN peacekeeping mission, the UNIFIL mission, that got fired on by Israeli troops. Have any Latvian troops been injured? And what is your message to Israel right now?
No, our soldiers were not injured, but I think that it is absolutely clear, and I already tried to touch upon that in my introductory remarks, that we absolutely support Israel's right of self-defense, and what happened last year was horrific. And I think that Israel has the right to fight back the terrorists, whoever they are, Hamas or Hezbollah. But Israel is a member state of the United Nations. UN peacekeepers are there with UN Security Council mandate to at least do what they can to ensure that the current situation does not spill over. So attacking UN peacekeeping force is completely unacceptable. Latvia, alongside with minister 34 or 35 countries that are participating in that mission, has issued a very strong statement and letter, and we expect Israel to comply with international law. At the same time, we do understand, of course, all those operations, but you know, this is a very, very, I would say, complicated situation. Yes, we do see the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, we do see what is happening in Lebanon, and yes, we do want to see also the kind of possible political headway where we can actually also discuss those issues. But Latvia is completely completely condemning attacks on UN peacekeepers.
To Israel's critique that the peacekeeping mission failed to keep Hezbollah fighters below the Litani River, so that they've been able to get above the Litani River. They've been able to get below and attack Israel from there.
Let's be very careful, because we have to look at what the mandate is. And then we are turning to a bit broader discussion about the UN reform, about UN Security Council reform, and ability or inability of the United Nations to do those very important tasks. But at this time, UN peacekeepers are not the ones to be attacked. The UN peacekeepers have their, of course, issues, but that's not the fault of the soldiers who are on the ground. That's a bit then up higher to the command ladder, the political ladder that we are discussing here.
And I know that UN reform is something that you care about, but that is another panel on another day. Your Excellency, thank you so very much.
Thank you.